Call to order our Board of Supervisors Isle of Wight, October 2nd, 2025 work session. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Acree?
Here.
Mr. Jefferson?
Here.
Mr. Stefano?
Here.
And Chairman Rosie?
Here. Okay.
And the chairperson, Mrs. Roundtree, wishes to participate remotely.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the member, pardon me.
All right, so we,
Ms. Roundtree, just, are you there?
I'm here.
Can you confirm that you wish to participate remotely?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and can you confirm you're unable to appear in person due to a business obligation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and can you tell us where you're participating from?
Chicago, Illinois.
Okay, I just need one of you guys to make a motion.
okay, we have a motion.
I'll make the motion. We include Ms. Roundtree remotely in this meeting.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Acree?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Stefano?
Yes.
And Chairman Rosie?
Yes, so moved. All right, at this time, you all have the agenda before you. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? If none, can we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Acree?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Stefano?
Yes.
Ms. Roundtree?
Yes.
Chairman Rosie?
Yes, so moved. And at this time, we have the invocation, and Ms. Roundtree, have you asked someone to do that?
I have, Mr. Robertson is going to give the invocation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
All right, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for this opportunity to come together. We ask now that you would bless our board members as they deliberate over county business. Bless our staff as we provide information to them so that they can make good decisions on behalf of the citizens of this community. And we ask that you continue to bless those who serve our community, those in law enforcement, public safety, EMS, and who serve our community in a way that is exemplary. We ask that you continue to bless us, that we would be servants to those who are in our community and that they would be blessed as a result of that. For it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Mr. Robertson, I believe you're up with the county administrator's report.
Yes, sir. Have a relatively short agenda for you tonight, Mr. Chairman. The first two items being carryover items from the regular meeting. But the first item is the county's legislative priorities for the 2026 General Assembly session. And I've got information in front of you. If you've had a chance to look at the draft, we provided, in addition to those items that were in there from last year, we provided some language under unfunded mandates that deals with the exemption for veterans, for disabled veterans. We also included an item, kind of cleaned it up, but if you recall, last year, kind of late in the process, you had the whole issue of pharmaceutical requirements for our EMS units.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got that item clearly defined this year in terms of requesting funding for that to help the volunteer agencies out. And lastly, at your last meeting, you all asked for us to give consideration to the backseat law as it relates to primarily ambulance passengers. So those are the items included in your legislative packet. Obviously, you can discuss those, but if you feel comfortable that we have addressed your priorities, we'd simply request that you adopt a resolution approving and incorporating these items into your priority list.
Members, do you have any additional items that you feel would be a priority that you want to bring forward at this time? And that includes you, Renee?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Okay.
Mr. Robertson, will you be, or will we as a locality be supporting the 1% local sales tax to be?
That's already in
promoted
there.
with schools?
But yes, that
Okay.
that item is already included.
Okay. Also, I think we could add to the unfunded mandate kind of category, school security. I know that, as a locality, we fund pretty much all out, notwithstanding a couple of small grants for SSROs, but we fund all of the extra school security measures that happen in our schools, and I know that that's something that the school board is talking to at least Senator Jordan about. And so I think, if we could support legislation in that regard, I think that would be helpful. If you have any questions about that, for the
I
school
guess
board.
the question I would have is, are you advocating a new item? I don't know that school security is mandated.
Well, neither is bus service, but these are things that are mandatory, and they are unfunded by the state.
Well, if I may, Ms. Roundtree, to kind of
Yep.
get on board with you on this, and I don't know if it needs to be dissected or exact way to put this, but it's reminiscent of our comp positions. We have the state, as I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong here. We have comp positions that the state give us for things like Sheriff's Department. First of all, I believe the numbers that they provide based on our population, they don't give us enough comp positions to cover all the numbers that they recommend for a population our size. Does that sound about right? I understand that's correct. And then to go further than that, the comp board doesn't pay a salary high enough that virtually anybody would be interested in being law enforcement, let alone one at a school resource officer. So when you look at the comp positions, and I think that's where this probably they would try to put it under, and then they wouldn't fund it because they don't fund what they're supposed to already. We're not only faced with that every year, we're also faced with the fact that they just feel like it's Christmas time and they just want to give out raises to their comp positions. And what that translates to as a locality is that they're going to give a 3% raise to their comp positions. Well, 3% on the salaries that they give us for their comp positions, again, nobody would want to take the jobs because we have to put money as a locality in that to make them somewhat lucrative. And they do this mid-year. So here we are mid-year after we've skinned down what last year we went a half a penny on a tax rate to try to get our rate like it's supposed to be. And they come around, what was it, Christmas time, before Christmas, somewhere along that, in the middle of the budget, if you will, and decide they're going to hand out a raise. Puts us in a bad spot because we've trimmed our budget down to where there's no fluff to just go out and give out raises. And then, of course, in this day and age, maybe rightfully so, that's a discussion for another time, you give out raises for comp positions, which are only law enforcement, but what about your paramedics and stuff, or teachers for that matter? And then we talk about SOQs, which is pretty much mirrors the same issue. So I guess, Renee, I'm right on board with you, school security, because if they would fund our comp positions like they're supposed to, we'd have money to pay for the SROs that we've had to put into our schools. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree, Supervisor. I agree. Not just lucrative for those people at, the top levels of our locality to accept those jobs and remain in those jobs, other than a deep love for public service, but also just comparable to other directors even. I know every year I'm on the committee, the HR committee, and a lot of times we have those discussions. Is there equity and equality at the top levels of the people that we count on to lead our locality? So absolutely agree with that.
So if I could ask a question, we currently have a statement in what's currently been drafted that says the county requests that the General Assembly adequately fund the state's share for required programs that must be implemented at the local level and/or eliminate the service requirement of the mandate. Does that generally capture what you all are getting at, or are you wanting to be much more
I think
specific?
you have to separate a little bit on the do away with the mandate, but the thing like you mentioned before, we want to make sure our veterans can survive on their disability payments or what they get from disability. At the same time, as a locality, we're bearing the burden. So to me, there's some mandates there that you just can't do without. Can't do, to Renee's point, we can't do without safety in our schools or safety in our community. They go hand in hand around here because the sheriff's department does our law enforcement. So I would say that if we can, I think that's on point, but I think we should give some examples.
Oh, we do.
Positions, SOQs, and stuff like that. Yeah, but I think we may have to segregate because we're not asking for them just, oh, well, we don't, because you know how some politicians are. They'll just say, well, we don't mandate that. Okay, now you're just splitting hairs now. You know what I mean? So I know y'all can word craft it, but I think that would be what we're after.
Well, and that's why I said this, made the statement earlier, that's not necessarily mandated, but this statement doesn't necessarily talk about only those things that are mandated. It talks about those things that are required at the local
Yeah.
level.
Well, and I guess the hand in hand with what Ms. Roundtree is saying is, we've got these compositions that are for law enforcement. They say we need law enforcement, and we have to have law enforcement. Well, we have to have it in our schools too. It's the same department. So if we had funding for one or the other, it would allow our sheriff to, if you will, move the positions or move the money where it needed to be if they would give us the proper funding. In other words, if they give us enough funding for all the law enforcement, all our deputies that are on the street, if you will, then the county would only have to come up for money for SROs, for example. But they don't. So we have to come up for money not just for SROs, but to make the salaries lucrative and for the number of positions the sheriff needs. Anyway,
No, I'm sitting here literally, I'm,
that process and all
it
that.
just sounds like you all want some additional items.
But I think it falls under unfunded mandates.
Again, you can fact check me, but it is my understanding that bus service is also not mandated, but vital to educating our children. So there's quite a few things that fall under that. Perhaps it bears, further discussion in our strategic planning retreat, or certainly before we have to turn in our legislative agenda. But I think you get the point. My second point that I'd like us to address somewhat, and I know Chairman Rosie is keenly aware of this issue, but this growing season for our farmers, Isle of Wight is we pride ourselves on being an ag friendly and an agronomic community. This year, I do think it's become more important than ever that we address issues with VDOT and failure to perform with secondary road cleanup and weeds. My understanding, again, Chairman Rosie, if you can support me, because I know you're in the room, now more than ever, it is very difficult for a farmer to grow a crop that's going to even cover their inputs and their costs to put a crop in the ground, given what they can sell it for and the commodity prices. And look, I know that's a much larger issue, but when there are weeds in the ditches and along the sides of the fields this summer, this growing season, now more than ever, I've witnessed where the weeds jump several rows into what should be a bountiful crop and kill the crop. So, in this very instance, because VDOT does not, have enough budgeted, whatever, cannot have the resources or does not choose to put the resources into weed control on our secondary roads, it is, deleterious to the production for farmers. And I think we should stand up for that and ask for changes with VDOT.
Yeah, I would fully support that. There's a lot of impact going on. Of course, everybody's talking about tariffs. I don't want to overplay that record in many different ways, but we know that, for example, right now, soybean, with what Brazil's pumping into the global market, just here in the last few days, a lot of folks have been cut off from being able to even sell their soybeans because of the flood that's coming into the market. With cotton, folks are going to either take a loss or they're barely breaking even. A lot are not even putting it in the ground because of the competition out there globally. Corn prices are ridiculously low. The list goes on. So there's quite an impact. And what you're talking about in terms of the roads and VDOT just adds to the whole situation.
I think a secondary issue to that, totally unrelated to VDOT, is that the farmers don't have adequate granaries to market their crop. So, again, they pay all the inputs to production, and then because different places have closed, right, there's not a place to even, the farmers are having to go further and further away from where they produce the crops to actually market and sell their production.
Has the state ever fully funded comp positions? Ever?
The short answer would be no. It's a little more complicated than that, but no. Even if they gave us the number of positions that we reasonably needed, the funding that they provide per position, as was stated earlier, doesn't even come close to providing a competitive salary. So the short answer is no.
Obviously, they don't intend to fully fund it, but it would be interesting to know how they derive at some of the numbers they come to. Also, in consideration of the fact that our school systems are behind other nations. We used to lead them, and now I think at one point we were ranked 40th of all the nations. And it would seem like federally we need to change that or try to persuade others to step forward to help with our senators and delegates to try to get some change in Congress and the Senate on that. It needs to be a priority. If we do more than just say, look, we really want to have the best education, but you've got to have the tools to have that education. You got to have the teachers to have that education.
So I'm assuming the school board has a legislative, I mean, they have their own lobbyist and all that, not the school board itself, but, I mean, they have that whole political circle to some degree, do they not?
They do, but if you recall, our school board, I guess, kind of pulled out of the state association that most of the school boards were in. So I don't know if they still have that lobbying arm available to them or not.
I missed that, I'm sorry. Did y'all know that?
I did not
Put
know
you on the
that.
spot. You did?
Yeah.
I should have paid attention, I apologize. When was that?
Earlier this year, like first part of the year, maybe last year.
It was about a year
Last year,
ago.
wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Supervisor Acree, I just thought one more issue, just a clarifying question. I think that you're our representative, our regional representative, HRTPO, correct me if I'm wrong, but can you talk about where, the project that the late Supervisor McCarty, I know was advocating for with regard to, pennies or a small tax
0.2 cent on a dollar.
locally to be split in Hampton roads for secondary road use? I know traffic is another issue that's near and dear to our citizens' hearts.
Yes, I think it was 0.2 cent on the dollar. That's what we were looking at. That's still a legislative priority of HRPDC, and that'll be going forward through that body. And of course, you have the whole regional support on that.
And what's drafted actually does allude to that as well in terms of the position that the county takes, noting that we were looking for some innovative regional funding solutions to address transportation, construction, repair, and maintenance needs throughout the Commonwealth.
So just because that's been brought up on the radar, and I apologize for liking to talk sometimes, I don't know what it's all about. But anyway, HRPDC, as y'all may know, was a mandate by the state several years ago, if not decades ago. The original funding was somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 from the state because we had to have a planning district commission. That has been reduced over the years. As cost goes up, you would think, but then again, we're talking about the state, right? I want to say it's $100-some thousand is all the state contributes to the HRPDC. Everything else, for the most part, it's sustainment funding from the localities.
That and grants.
So, yeah. And so that kind of goes hand in hand. We can see a pattern here, whether it's compositions or other unfunded mandates. They just got a nice long list from the state. So, anyway. But you brought up the HRPDC. I thought that was worthy of bringing up, and that is on the legislative agenda for the HRPDC also.
Okay.
So the local
Thank
issues,
you.
Which is good.
the local issues that we have on the legislative priority list, they are the ones that we sort of prioritize from top to bottom, so to speak.
Yes. Now, outside of the first one, they're not necessarily in any particular priority ranking in terms of the listing. But yes, short answer is yes, these
Right,
are your
okay.
priorities. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, I guess what I'm hearing tonight is you want me to go back and add some additional items.
I believe so.
Okay, we'll have those at your next meeting. I think the legislators were trying to get them like yesterday, but we'll have these on your next agenda.
May I, so the additional sales tax for educational purposes, that's
The
the,
1%.
that's the 1% that we've been trying and trying, right?
Yes.
And we hoping that it might, I don't know, keep pushing uphill, maybe it'll
On
go over the top.
election,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if time sensitivity, or it's sensitive of some sort, I mean, and my point is that not still our priority? I mean, if you had, I'm not saying we just drop everything else, but if you're gonna, it's at the top of the list, and I think that's, at least that's what we said last year, and we said the year before. I mean, at least while we're getting our list together, if there has to be some communications, if somebody says, where are y'all at on these things? We've got some other items, but that's still top of our list.
And I've previously communicated with some of the legislators, so they know that's still at the
I mean,
top of
that's-
your list.
That's, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
And those tax dollars can be used for capital, that's correct? Or does it?
correct.
I think that's absolutely the priority, knowing where we're at with the upcoming need for school builds in this county. That's gotta be top.
And you may or may not be aware, the last time, which was last General Assembly session, there was a provision that would also allow you to go back and use some of that funding toward existing, excuse me, debt service.
Okay.
So it gave additional flexibility to that funding, but short answer is, yes, it is geared primarily toward capital funding.
Just while we're speaking of that, just reminding myself out loud, and I apologize for doing this, but this gives us the ability, we would have to do a referendum, basically, right? It doesn't just
Yes,
automatically
correct.
impose a tax.
Correct.
So my point would be, and I've seen it in other localities, you would think to some it was a no-brainer, and to others it wasn't. It was a no way, it's just another tax, pay for it with all the money you already have. So my point is, I think it still needs to be a priority, but just because it gets passed at state level doesn't mean it's a done deal. I'm hoping citizens will see that and look into it and see what this is all about, instead of just looking at it as another tax. So,
How much tweaking do you think it will take to get this ready for us to vote, or can we just
I will
summarize?
have this on your next agenda.
Is that gonna be soon enough?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
the having it there by the 1st of October was, I think, aspirational on the part of the legislators to say, the sooner they get our information, the sooner they can start working on drafting legislation or lobbying on our behalf. There's nothing magical about that. I think they were just saying that puts us in a better position to get some of these things done.
Okay, so we can put this on our next agenda, but we can go to the next one.
Sure. The next item is also an item that we talked about at your regular meeting. If you'll recall, the county has been fortunate to have, received funding for several smart-scale projects. More recently, though, we had Phase 1 of the Route 17 improvement projects that was in your out years in your CIP. VDOT contacted staff recently and said, hey, there's an opportunity for that project to be moved forward in the process sooner rather than later. Would you all like to take advantage of that opportunity? You all kind of gave us the nod, and so bottom line is that we can move that project forward in the current year as it relates to the design. There are any number of reasons why that's a really good thing for us to do. I'll just point out one. The cheapest this project's gonna be is today. And so if you can move it forward, you're probably gonna move it forward at a much lower cost than it would be 5 years from now. So obviously, we strongly recommend that you move forward on that. In order to do that, you would need to front fund at least a portion of the money for the project. We're recommending the $1.9 million be front funded, which is the funding necessary for the design phase. The rest of the project, the right-of-way and the construction portion of the project, we would include that as a part of your budget process. So you have an opportunity to fully vet those projects and also budget for that over the next couple of years. But the $1.9 million is what we would need to provide now. We can pull that money from unassigned fund balance from a budgeting standpoint. To Mr. DeStefano's questions last time about whether or not this would have impact on our interest or any of that, we won't move that money until we need it. And we're not going to move a whole 1.9 million. We will simply move whatever we need at any given point in the process over the next 8-9 months. So the likelihood that there's going to be a significant impact on accrued interest or any of that is minimal.
It just gets earmarked into.
Exactly,
Unassigned fund balance.
And the other part to note is because this is a smart scale project, the state actually funds it. So we have to front fund to get the project moving forward, but we would be reimbursed for those expenditures.
So no additional front funding would be beneficial at all. It's just because you can't do anything until the design's done. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, obviously, we have to do the design before anything
But just
can move
sometimes I've
forward,
heard Ms. Oliver say, some of the larger localities, we're not in a position to put the kind of money they do, but I didn't know if putting money up front sooner than later helps.
Not in this case. We actually are already benefiting from the project being
Fantastic.
moved forward.
So we really need to accept a resolution to amend the budget and transfer funds from unassigned fund balance to the year 2025-26 capital budget for transportation improvements in the amount of $1,922,692,000.
Correct.
I'll make the motion.
Okay? Any other discussion? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes,
Mr. DeStefano?
Yes.
Ms. Roundtree?
Yes,
Mr. Avery?
Yes.
Chairman Rosie?
Yes, so moved. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the next item is, we had previously provided some information for you, but you wanted at least to revisit or look at the information relative to the growth rate study. That is included in your agenda packet. So we've got that in front of you. Don't know exactly what the conversation needs to be as relates to that, other than you've looked at this before. This is the information that the consultant provided. We actually brought her in virtually a few meetings ago, and she talked about obviously the actual rate of growth, simulating or looking at a 2% rate of growth, and then also at a 3% rate of growth, and what the potential impacts of that would be. The document that's in your agenda was the proposed final version of it, so.
Thoughts, comments?
Met with school staff and the presentation they're receiving from Tischler Bice, and their version is still in draft as well, and that was on the 22nd of September. I would suggest that we revisit this once that's a finalized version. The idea being that those two should be integrated reports, and at this point, we really can't compare and contrast those reports and understand how they integrate.
I agree, Mr. DeStefano. We've asked if the school's portion would be completed prior to October, the retreat on the 7th.
Right.
They think it will, but I've not gotten any indication from them that they've received that as of today.
Did they have a deadline in their contract for when it was supposed to be
I don't think
completed?
there was a hard date,
Okay.
but I think they're really close, though.
Okay. Any other discussion on that?
If not, Mr. Chairman, the last item that I had for you tonight was just a reminder of your annual retreat, which is scheduled for Tuesday, beginning at 9 a.m. We've looked at the information that the facilitator has provided for us in the way of just a really brief agenda. I think the first part of the day is going to be focused on dealing with like your mission statement, your vision statement, those kinds of statements or portions of your strategic plan. And the bulk of that will be a function of the feedback that you all provided. So if you provided that, that's great. If you have not, you'll get that to us or get that to her. We can still get that incorporated prior to the retreat on Tuesday. I know some folks were having computer problems, but like I said, if we can get that information, we still need that, still want to get that to the consultant, the facilitator, and she can certainly incorporate that into the discussion. About noonish, around lunchtime, we'll bring in the department heads, really as a resource to you all, but it's still your conversation, your dialogue relative to the strategic plan. But late morning and then the balance of the afternoon will be spent working on your goals and objectives for the strategic plan, with the intent and the hope that at the conclusion of the day, you will have a draft strategic plan. So we're hoping to get a lot of work accomplished in those few hours that we've got you locked in the room. That said, at 4 p.m., we've invited the school board, and they are planning to come and to talk with you in a joint meeting, and they've outlined essentially 4 things that they would want to discuss with you, and I think it's probably consistent with at least some of your thinking, but please tell me tonight if it's not. Obviously, number 1 on their list is replacement of the West Side Elementary School. There's been ongoing conversation about that. They want to continue that dialogue and get a sense as to what your comfort level is in moving forward with that project. The second item is actually related to the first. They want to talk about what would be the requirements or what's necessary relative to site acquisition for that school. Do we have sites identified? Are there sites that are county-owned properties? Are there other sites that may not be county-owned that we ought to be looking at or investigating? So they just want to have a conversation and get a sense of where we are with that. The third item gets to what we were just talking about with regard to the studies. They want to talk about the updated school capacity report, which is their version of the Tischler-Weiss data, and how that will help to facilitate the new division alignment, meaning that they want to go to a more consistent, more traditional alignment of the schools. So all of the elementary schools would be K through 5. The 2 middle schools would be grades 6 through 8, and then the high schools would be grades 9 through 12. So they're trying to move toward that model as a consistent model throughout the county. Right now, Isle of Wight has what can be best described as a hybrid model. And then lastly, they want to have a conversation with you all about the other capital improvement items that they prioritized as a school board.
Okay.
So I don't know if you all have other items that you want to add to that, but if you recall, you kind of gave us strict instructions to keep this to roughly an hour and a half to 2 hours. So we can add more items, but
We got to talk fast.
yeah.
Mr. Robertson, either at that meeting or separate from that meeting, could we look at historical or prospective grants that might be associated with large capital improvements like a school to understand how that could, if there are any available?
When you say historical,
Like, for
Grants?
example, when we built Hardy, was there any state or federal funding that assisted in building it?
sir.
Is there any available for those types?
that was local money.
Is there any availability for those?
I mean, we can certainly ask. The schools might be aware of some potential funding. Most of the funding that I'm aware of is not necessarily, it's not grant funding. there are loan programs or things of that nature, but you got to pay those back. But we can certainly talk to the schools about what, if any, opportunities are out there that we can potentially pursue.
It wouldn't be a bad idea, from a historical perspective, even though it wasn't long ago, that as much as we can, we talk about Hardy and the fact that, I mean, everybody remembers that, but interest rates were low. That allowed us to not just get good interest rates, if you will, for the building of the school, but we reorganized some of our debt.
Yeah.
That allowed us, we were going up on the tax rate to do Hardy Elementary, and we didn't. At the same time, to give credit where credit's due, if it's, I think it's appropriate, we work closely with school administration for things like, I think some of the furnishings, et cetera, so on, as much as practical.
Absolutely.
To show that, I think and I think that's a good thing, to the public, there must have been some grants or some money available when we built this wonderful school. Bottom line is, it wasn't, and it was a whole lot of work, and the good Lord looking after us, because as much as construction costs went up, we hadn't had the rates that we had, what, point something %, which
It
was
was
just
pretty low,
crazy
yeah.
once,
It
probably
was
once,
cheap money.
definitely once in a lifetime. That's not gonna happen again. And so when people say, you built this, why can't you just, it's only been this many years, anybody would know that it's changed a lot, and we just got lucky, whatever, at that particular space and time, because I believe the furnishings alone were.
It's pretty substantial.
It was.
Yeah.
If we just had today, if the school board, I think it would be challenging, the school board came to us and said, we need amount of furnishings Hardy Elementary required in one go, we'd have difficulty. I believe it's a fair statement, wouldn't you?
No, I think that's accurate.
So I guess my point is, kind of unpack it a little bit, because it seems to me when I talk to some of the school board members, they're so focused, and they're so focused on the children, good education, and everything they're supposed to be focused on. But when it came to the school stuff, I think we could all use a little bit of just a quick reminiscent and how we got there, so we understand the challenges, and we can look at the new challenges that have come up in this short amount of time. Would you agree?
So you want to include maybe just kind of a brief recap of the
And
Hardy
maybe-
project?
Because like the
and
tax
some of
rate, I mean, I'm sorry, I keep saying that, the rating for bonds was a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah.
It's not to say we can't do it again, but we got to get more creative than we even were
Yeah.
the first time. And the other part is, which is on our legislative agenda, we need our school board and our teachers and everybody that knows somebody to get on board with the legislation to try to get us the ability to impose a tax on ourselves to build the schools.
Agree with your point, Mr. Acree, and that's kind of what I was discussing too, with the potential for grants. Knowing how tight it was this year to maintain the 4.5% raise or 4.5% raise, which was the minimum that we really tried hard to get down to that level. And knowing that, perspective for next year is probably even a tighter situation with some of the loss in commercial and industry that we had in our county. We should make sure that every stone is not, unturned to look for funding that's available. And the reason I bring it at that meeting is that there may be some responsibility in the schools to help identify some of those grant fundings so that we're working together to, make this happen if that's ultimately what's voted to happen.
No, like I said, we can certainly have them, provide any information that they have on that. I will note, just as a side note, this has become a point of emphasis legislatively for the last several years. So while we have focused on the 1%, because we think that's one tool that would benefit us and help us relative to school construction, the whole conversation around school construction has been a pretty big topic of discussion at the state level. So I suspect that will continue to be a significant conversation. And the General Assembly has been looking for ways to help localities, but they haven't really committed fully to that.
Yeah, maybe it can be a sort of an elevated level and just a briefing on where they're at least that'll start some of the conversation going forward. They wouldn't be ready for a whole lot of detail right now, and neither would we, but at least we can move it forward. Okay?
Any other thoughts
Chairman
about?
Rossi,
Oh, no, I'm
if I
sorry.
may.
Yes. Please.
So just a couple points about our upcoming retreat, October 7th. I think this discussion underscores the importance of Tischler Weiss tying a ribbon through both studies that our citizens have, we have appropriated money to pay Tischler Bice for two separate studies, the growth study as well as the school capacity and placement, et cetera, for, their strategic planning. I think it's really important that we underscore prior to our retreat and then subsequent, 4 p.m. joint meeting of both boards that we really need these studies to come to a close and be wrapped up and finalized with their recommendations. Certainly, I know the growth study report was first drafted and presented to us back in March, so it's time. And then the school study was promised to be delivered by July 31st, and it's time. And we need to move on and consider this information that, again, citizens of our county have paid over $100,000 to have these studies done, so I think we owe it to wrap this up. So, any kind of direction or guidance or importance that we can underscore with Tischler Bice to have these things for our information and review in as finalized a format as possible by the 7th of October. I think we should do that prior to that date. I think it's also important for this joint board discussion at 4 p.m. That we have this, since part of the Tischler Bice study that the schools commissioned was to help identify appropriate placement and location for a replacement or a new school, et cetera. So I think it's all vital to our discussion. I would like to add that this joint meeting between the Board of Supervisors and the school board, the timing of it falls relatively about the same time that we did last year, just to begin to talk early and often about the budget. Nothing feels worse than to be rushed with something that is of utmost importance to our citizens. And so I'd say that, this is a good use of time. It's never too early to prep for the budget. And as such, when we speak, let's make sure that we're not just talking about only the capital budget, but also operations and FTE budget. I mean, I very much in my career like to split a budget up with regard to, capital, yes, but then shortly followed by an FTE discussion and an operational discussion. I know the schools are in a much, much better physically, financially responsible state, in the last few years since we've gotten stabilized financial leadership on that side. And as such, you guys have noticed the last 2 years, that's the art of budgeting, right? That we're very close to the number that was budgeted. So we do what we say we're going to do. We plan to do it. We do what we say. And we land at the end of the fiscal year really close to where we budgeted we would be. And in the last two budgets that I've experienced, being on the Board of Supervisors, the schools have ended up with a surplus. And it wasn't a planned surplus. That maybe no one even could have, guessed what that would be. But I would just urge us to really talk about all three parts of the budget so that we could be really close and not, budget for expenditures that are unneeded because we didn't budget close enough to where everything ended up. Again, I know some of that is indeterminable before you actually know how many students are in school on certain days and how many people matriculate, et cetera. But I think our relationship is strengthened by this communication, and I think just going into this budget season, eyes wide open, it'll be here before we know it, and to continue that open dialogue, I feel like our relationships are strengthening between the two boards and all for the good of the county. We're all working for the same things. And so, again, I think instead of only focusing on capital and their new plan with program capacity, et cetera, we should, assure that in that 2 hours that we've kind of set, and look, if we go over the 2 hours, we need to meet again, right? But I do think we should spend some time on the operational budget as well as the FTE. It's fine to start with capital, CIP, right? But then we also need to have an FTE discussion, and we need to hear now what they're thinking for the next budget with regard to FTEs, and then an operations discussion. One of those things that I really want to make sure that we talk about is the self-insured health plan idea that we began, if you gentlemen recall, beginning to discuss that certainly in the past, but again in earnest last October. And I think this is something that's coming down the track that that bears some discussion as a joint body.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and perhaps we can try to communicate some of the things that were just mentioned as a part of the suggested discussion when we come to that meeting. If they come prepared, it'll help.
Yeah, I'll communicate with the superintendent.
Other matters for the board's concern in regard to the retreat or otherwise?
I'm not able to, I got kicked out of my computer, I had computer issues. Anyway,
It's,
are we at the end of the agenda?
yeah.
Yes.
So, just one other item, I should have added it to it, but we were sitting here talking about money. My understanding is that the Fire and Rescue Group Association Committee, did they meet and discuss
Yes.
staffing concerns?
Yes. And we'll be bringing that item to you on the 16th.
Okay.
They, as I understand it, they were all in agreement and all in favor of forwarding that item to you all.
Okay. Anything else? You do realize what time it is. I wouldn't want to get out of here too early.
Well, like I said, we're gonna have you locked in on Tuesday, so we didn't want to abuse you tonight.
If there are no other discussions or matters for the board, meeting is adjourned.